He looks good in SO1. Roger.
PCS arm switch is on.
Okay, Victor.
Landing rocket arm switch is on. Here comes the throttle. Circuit breakers in. We have separation.
Roger.
Inboard and outboards are on. We're coming forward with the side stick.
All looks good.
Roger. I've got a blowout. Amber 3.
Pitch your pitch to 0.
Pitch is out. I can't hold altitude. Correction. Alpha hold is off. Trip selectors emergency. Flight calm. I can't hold it. She's breaking up. She's breaking.
You're listening to CaveRadioBroadcasting.com.
Buddy, this is Down the Rabbit Hole. I'm Dave Hooper, and I'm joined by a couple of good buddies, Dave DiBiase on my right, and I'm staring right down Shalty's grill as we speak.
Lucky you.
How,
It's a beautiful grill. I'm digging it, man. It's good. You know, you helped me out last couple Wednesdays getting to the cave, and you know, I appreciate.
I might have knocked a few years off your life
you did.
with
You
the fear of.
I'm not gonna lie. You are a little crazy when it comes to driving, but that's all right.
I was, I actually left later today to get here than ever, but I found a new route.
Okay.
And I was already like pre-worried about how I was going to be maneuvering through traffic, because in my mind, if you're not willing to drive 100 miles an hour in the left-hand lane, you have no business in that lane.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
But the truth is, that's a joke.
Maybe
That's
not
just-
100.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, they are pulling it up to 75, and then in rural areas 80.
Really?
Yeah,
How are you doing, Dave?
Dude, today I'm pumped up, man. I'm good.
I can feel your energy.
It's been an incredible day.
It's magnetic.
Yeah, it's been a good day.
Speaking of magnetic, we're going to be talking about some science, magnetism being one of the 4 basic forces of nature. We'll go back to that in a little bit. I wanted to get a couple of standard parts of the show that we're still putting together. I wanted to get a couple out of the way. Number 1 is Architects and Engineers for 911truth.org. Actually, I'm out of place here. Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. Their website is ae911truth.org. Absolute science-based website, run and with the information coming from engineers, scientists, and architects. The information they have on there is not disputable. They are in a membership drive, and if you care about helping the truth get out, that is, for me anyway, anyone that's heard me talk before knows that is probably the most significant organization that I've come across in my life. Once again, hats off to Richard Gage for having the guts, especially in the early days, to get out there and talk about it. And his CEO, essentially the woman in charge, Kelly David. How you doing, honey? Haven't talked to you in a week or two, and I miss you. I got to get out to California. So if you're looking for the truth of 9/11 or want to understand a little bit more about why half of this nation does not believe the official story any longer, and that number keeps dwindling, go visit ae911truth.org and consider getting a membership. I cannot say more good stuff about it. And also want to throw a hello out to a good friend in Jersey who runs a website also based on the search for truth. That is, actually, Dave, our friend Claudio Marti. And you can find out what he and thousands upon thousands of people are up to. Visit IamTheFaceOfTruth.com. And not least, I normally save the best for last, and I said last week in the immortal words of Tim Tebow, just want to make sure that God knows I'm giving, everything that happens on this show is because ultimately he either let it happen or is making it happen, and that is not lost on us. So I want to make sure he knows that we are throwing some glory and praise his way. I don't want to sound Bible thumperish, but I got to give credit where credit is due. So tonight we are going to be talking about a few things. I guess the topic or the subject of the show is the seeming polarization of good and evil. And a lot of this is from anecdotal stories. And when I say anecdotal, I mean like personal stories, personal experiences, one-time experiences. I'm not necessarily talking about scientific or researched trends, but I have certainly observed in my personal life, and we're going to turn the microphone over to Dave here, who's got, I think, at least one, perhaps two very interesting stories that happened this week. I have been noticing a polarization. It's as if the things and people that are good in this world are getting really good, and the things and people that are, quote unquote, evil or not good in this world are getting worse. And I suppose at some point on this show we should define exactly, what is evil. It's a very nebulous term, and we don't all have the same definition of exactly what it is or where our sense of right and wrong come from. And you may not make sense yet, but this actually will be tied into CERN. If you're not familiar with what CERN is, and the acronym here is CERN, it's also known as it's a Large Hadron Collider. It is actually the largest machine on the planet. Anyone listening right now, I would suggest if you want to familiarize yourself a little bit with CERN, just do a Google, I'll always say the same thing. YouTube it, do a little research, look up something like CERN, conspiracy, sermon, CERN, dimension, portals. This is a very real machine, perhaps the most expensive ever built in the history of man. But I won't say it's the first time we've built it. We are also going to be talking about CERN's links and parallels to the Tower of Babel, which some of you may be familiar with, is right out of the book of Genesis, and how some things that are happening again in today's world are maybe just a replay of things that have happened in the past. We're going to look at that possibility. And as I always say, it is not down the conventional hole. It is down the rabbit hole. So have an open mind. I don't want anyone to believe what Dave or I say, unless it's like a personal story from Dave's life. You can trust him. He's an honest man. But in terms of science or quotes or dates, conclusions, at the end of the day, we want you to come up with your own. Want you to do your own research. We'll throw out some names. We'll throw out some things to look up. You can look them up, form your own conclusions. That's the only way this stuff really, gets coded into your heart. And I'll always remind you guys of that. So I don't want you to believe me. In fact, I'd like you to even question me. And our show tagline, I still haven't thought of a better one. I don't know about you, Dave. You don't need to look at me like you're about to cry.
I haven't thought of a better one, so.
So I'm sticking with this one for now. There are no more secrets, just ignorance. So I'm going to save the quote of the week for a little bit later. But Dave, I understand you've got a couple of stories, at least one story, that you want to share with me and the audience. So let's hear it.
A couple things first. Today, my oldest daughter, Darielle, she passed her state exam for cosmetology. She'll be licensed soon, so congrats, Dari. Awesome job.
Good job, honey.
Is just kicking it in the rear. She is like 100 miles an hour. She's awesome. Also, today is, or would have been, my brother's birthday. He was born February 10th, 1979, and we lost him back in 2014. And I want to read this text real quick just to give you kind of an idea how my day started. I wish I was as good as she is when I was 19, 20 years old. I mean, it's unreal.
This is a text him taking it from your daughter.
My daughter sent me a text to check up on me, see how I was doing today, right? Because it's it's my brother's birthday, and normally, last year I was a complete wreck on this day, right? And today's been different, man. It's like like I was telling you earlier, man, I've just been pumped all day. It's been a good day. It's just been I've just repelled negativity. I'm not having it today. Not accepting it.
I know. I can
Not
feel it.
accepting it at all.
And by the way, I never noticed you were hurting like that. And last night we were talking because I'd lost my best friend in the middle of the night. This was about 10 years ago, and it's not like your brother, but it rocked me. I never noticed it because you and I really became friends almost the minute after he died. That's when we really started. It's almost like
well, there are no coincidences.
Exactly.
So
I mean that
this happened for a reason. So she sent me a text today, and I wanted to share this because number one, to show what kind of kid she is, and number two, just to give you my response. And then I'll go into the story because the text references it, and it'll be confusing for people that don't know what I'm referring to. But she just sent me a text, general, you doing okay today? Just wanted to check on you, kind of a text message, right? See how I'm doing. And my response was, I said, yeah, I'm good, Dar. You know me. I said, I'm pumped up for the radio show tonight. Uncle T is hanging out with Jesus. Grace's brother is probably going home soon. There's just too much good to be bummed out. I said, carry that with you today. Love you. And that's how the day started. So before we get into all the evil, dark that we love so much to talk about, I want to talk about I think an absolute miracle that took place this past week. I think
No, I was going to say, hold that thought for 1 second because I want to clarify something. I wouldn't say we love to talk about evil, but I do think that you and I, Dave, on some level kind of found the reality of this spiritual world because we saw essentially the spiritual evil. Some people find God off the bat because of faith or because of their mother or father. In my particular case anyway, I found this organized evil / biblical, ancient. It's still the same one that was written about. And I'm not here to, pump up its what it does, but for me that was where my eyes started to really open up, where I'm like, holy mackerel, this really is real. Yeah.
It's not to honor it in any way, not to be misunderstood, but it does catch people's attention, and if it for me anyway, if it gets people to at least pay attention, then we've accomplished something.
Like in a lot of ways, it is more, for me, interesting
That's
to
what I
talk
meant.
about what these SOBs are up to.
Absolutely,
than
yes.
to talk about the merits of the gospel, for instance. Although they are both very important messages, nonetheless, I cut you off.
No, it's fine.
Where are you going with this thing?
Well, I think we kind of got into it the last show. Background. My wife is from the Philippines originally. Her whole family is still there. And there's this really, really nasty disease called dengue fever. It's a tropical disease. It's across the whole globe in tropical climates, spread by mosquitoes. And it can be mild dengue, which basically clears up in 7 to 10 days, and you might not even know you have it. But you also have another form of it, which is dengue hemorrhagic fever, which basically will show basically the same symptoms and illnesses like Ebola. And the biggest difference is that it's not contagious like Ebola. It's spread by mosquitoes, but you pretty much bleed, if it's gone too far, out of every orifice, bleed to death. It's horrible.
Well, it's all like your mucous membrane.
It's
ears,
ugly.
Nose,
it's ugly. Yes, it'll come out everywhere, right? So internally, all of that, and the effect of it is that it'll without. And I'm not a doctor by any means, but I know more about this now than I ever.
Like you gave yourself a PhD.
Than I ever cared to know. But it's always good to learn. But essentially the damage that the disease does is it perforates all your capillaries, veins, arteries, and all your plasma will leak out, and it destroys blood platelets, which is why you bleed to death. Grace's brother Ronnie came down with dengue fever, and it progressed very quickly into dengue hemorrhagic fever. And for those who aren't familiar with countries like the Philippines and the systems in place there, or the absence of them. It's not like here. Things we take for granted on a daily basis. These people simply don't have. So we got news that he's got dinghies in the hospital. So I said, okay, we need to keep on it, keep posted. And as it progressed, it turned out that his blood platelets were dropping at a rapid pace. And, of course, this whole last week was really, it was a tornado of events. And the time difference, keep in mind, is 13 hours.
Explain to everyone what blood platelets do for us.
Blood platelets are what causes your blood to clot, say, if you get cut, right? So if you get cut, you bleed. Platelets cause blood clots, and eventually that's what a scab is, right?
Coagulation of
Exactly.
the blood. Okay.
Without blood platelets, it's like hemophilia, which is a disease that you don't have platelets. You're a bleeder. You just bleed, and there's no way to stop it. And that's really the danger, other than obviously damage to internal organs, build up of fluids in the thoracic cavity, which is your chest. And it's just nasty. And, if it gets to that point and it's not taken care of, the blood platelets aren't replaced when they need to be, basically you're not going to survive it. And there's no magic bullet for this disease. There's no pills. There's no vaccine. It's basically fluid management, monitoring, constant blood testing, and you just basically pray, which is, I'm going to get into that, that these people will live. Well, came down, he needed blood products, right? He needed platelets. Now, not whole blood, because if it was whole blood, you could literally just get donors, right? Do a transfusion, and that would be quite simple to achieve. But you need processed blood products. So platelets, they have to actually remove this out of the blood and create, a blood product from it. And that's what he needed. And they didn't have type A blood platelets at the hospital he was at. So the scramble was on. And literally what they do, and I want people to really, really get your head wrapped around this concept. Most everybody here has been in the hospital before in their life, right? For serious things or minor things. And, when there's, if you need medicine or you need stuff, the hospital just has it. Doctor writes orders for it. Nurse comes, gives it to you. And for the most part, it's kind of handled in the background. What they do there is they hand the family a request form and say, we need type A blood platelets. We don't have any at the hospital, so basically go find some, good luck. So, and everybody, being that they're a very close family, is in kind of a panic state, right? Because he's limited time. It literally got to the point where his gums were bleeding. He was starting to show these internal bleeding. We were very nervous. And with the time difference, it's 13 hours ahead. So anything we're doing here is done in the middle of the night because it's at the daytime there.
Right.
So bottom line, they don't have any blood. So here, you guys, go find some. It's insane. It really is insane. And that's really a whole nother topic in of itself. But so I learned of this, and we got news that he needed 5 bags of blood. And they had some, and I may miss some details, but the crux of it will be communicated. They had some blood products on reserve for him, so we think, okay, we're good, right?
Right.
Well, then come to find out a whole day, basically, or half a day, the equivalent of the time difference, basically, is gone by, and I get home and from work, and Grace tells me that they're still trying to find blood for Ronnie. And I was just like, what? They said they had it on reserve. What is going on? And now I'm in a panic because it's not just Grace's family. It's my family. I love these people. I've been there. I've hung out with them. And I'm feeling real emotion and trauma, like traumatic events. For me, I usually do well with, but when it's with loved ones, like my kids or my wife or family, friends, it obviously adds an elevated level of panic. So I took a minute and I said, hold on a second. Let me just get a clear head. Let me think of something to do here. This is not right. I mean, they literally are scattered around, going from town to town, hospital to hospital, trying to find blood while the clock is ticking. And of course, I'm concerned for my concern for Ronnie, but also, my concern for Grace was what was out of my mind, because I just did not want her to have to experience what I experienced.
Right.
That was on my mind. I said, I just don't want to see her have to deal with this, so I have to do something. So I really, how I am, I just stopped for a minute. I said, let me figure something out. And I just, kind of in my mind asked God, hey, man, you got to give me some clarity here, let the emotions go so I can think. So I thought of...
now, 10 years ago, would you have ever thought to consider spiritual answers to a medical condition?
10 years ago, no.
All right.
No.
I mean, I'm in your...
Yeah,
I'm in your book.
Yeah, no.
Saying I used to make fun of, let's call it Eastern or spiritual medicine, and there are many different kinds. And I was a Western medicine, champion.
Yeah, 10 years ago, I probably would have. I may have broke down because of the level of panic and said, "God help me," but I don't know that He was listening to me 10 years ago. But I thought of the Red Cross immediately. I said, "There's got to be." They just had a major typhoon there. And there was this huge, rescue effort and recovery, and everyone poured in there to help these poor people that got just ravaged by this nasty typhoon, killed thousands of people, and it basically took out a whole city that's not even there anymore. It was just heartbreaking. So I'm like, there's got to be Red Cross. So instantly go online, look up Red Cross, and of course we're in Michigan, so it's in the middle of the night now. It's late. Daytime there. I'm not going to get a hold of anyone at the Red Cross in Michigan. At least I didn't think at the time. So I said, okay, this isn't going to work. I said, I need to get a hold of, or look and see, there must be one there, and their major city there is Davao City, right? So I look up Red Cross, Davao, pops right up. There's one right downtown Davao. So, and that's within, maybe 45 minutes or so from where they were at the time, right? But keep in mind, everyone's scattered all over the place looking for blood, so they're not just parked somewhere waiting, right? And there's only one form. So if one guy finds blood and the other guy has the form, that takes the time to get the form to the other guy, because it's apparently they don't have email or fax machines. That's sarcasm. But I was getting frustrated, right? So I get the number. I call the Philippine Red Cross and get a hold of a wonderful woman named Arlene, and ask her, I said, Arlene, I'm calling from the United States, and I hope that my voice is clear. If the connection's not good, I'll call you right back. I said, but I need type A blood platelets, and I need it right now. And she said, we have type A, fresh frozen, right here, right now. I said, well, you just sit right there and expect a call from somebody within 5 to 10 minutes. And the man that came to mind is a very good friend of mine, Grace's cousin's husband, Jong, wonderful man. And I knew that in this panic situation, Jong would be the guy to keep it together. So I called Jong, said, what are you doing right now? He says, hey, how you doing? I said, I need you to stop what you're doing right now, and I need you to call this number, ask for Arlene. She has blood. You need to somehow get down there, get it. Whatever you need, money, whatever, let us know. We'll get it to you. He says, okay, I'll do my best. Now, when Jong says that, he will knock down buildings to get stuff done. I know him. And sure enough, Ronnie needed, they managed to locate one bag somewhere else. He needed 4 more, and apparently the Red Cross had exactly 5 bags, which gives him 1 extra. They get the platelets, they get it back to Panabo City, start giving it to Ronnie, and that obviously brings his platelet level up, but his condition continued to deteriorate. So, and they're now panicking because they probably need to find more blood. So, and now time has gone on. Now we're into it's the next day. It's probably about noon. And now I'm in a real panic, and now I'm actually upset. I'm actually emotional. I'm crying. It's very hard for me to even function at this point. And I just start calling, thinking, who can I call? So I contact this man, Dizon, and if you ever hear this broadcast somehow on the podcast or whatnot, man, you're awesome. And he happened to be online in the middle of the night, and I don't even know why, but managed to get a hold of him, and he's at least was city councilman or something there. Basically, he's an important guy, awesome guy. And I called him on the phone and said, contact the family, man. They're having an emergency, and we need to do whatever we can do to save Ronnie. I mean, it's got to happen. So he contacted the family and threw out some other events, ended up transferring Ronnie from the hospital in Panabo City, because they don't really have much there, to a much bigger provincial, I think it's called a provincial hospital. It's like a government hospital in the bordering city of Tagum City. They have more resources and probably different doctors, whatever. Now, this is something that's stands out to me, and why I one of the reasons why I wanted to tell the story is about the time that Ronnie was being transferred from the hospital in Panabo City to Tagum City. His blood platelet level was 2 or 2,000, depending on your measurements metric, right?
Now, what's it supposed to be in a healthy person?
Normal, from what they're telling me, is 150,000. So he was literally at 0, right? Like none. Might as well be none. So they decide, I said, put him on an ambulance and transfer him to the other hospital. They transfer him. Now that's probably a 20-minute, 30-minute ride, something like this. They admit him. They get him into the hospital. They run some fresh blood work. And from the time he got from Panabo City to Tagum City, his blood platelet level was 34,000. Now, I had contacted during this my Uncle Rick, who I must thank very much. He has this amazing calming effect on people when you talk to him. It's definitely a gift, and he's a doctor. So I'm looking for tropical disease specialists. I mean, I'm digging, man. I'm trying to do anything that in my power I can do. So he went and looked up the all the information he could find on dengue fever, and he's telling me all the things to ask the doctor and what to do. So I kind of have a kind of grasp on what blood platelets are. Now, what's interesting about it is you go from a level of 2 to a level of 34 during an ambulance ride. It's interesting to me that at 40 is the cutoff for safe surgery. So basically, during the ambulance ride, his platelet level raised to the point where he probably wouldn't bleed to death. I just find that interesting. So they get him in the hospital in Tagum City, and it's still critical, man. I mean, he's critical. I mean, he's got all the worst of the worst symptoms. It's really nasty. I managed to get a hold of the doctor. I'm bouncing questions off of her, and she thinks I'm a doctor.
Yeah.
So she's referring to him as your patient, sir, this, your patient, that. So after the conversation, I felt pretty good about his condition at the time as far as, what his blood levels were. There's, and not getting all the medical terms, but there's your hematocrit level, which is your red blood cell percentage of your blood. That's how they can, from my understanding, tell whether you're actively bleeding or not. Well, his hematocrit was normal. His CBC overall, which is your blood count, all the hemoglobin, all these things, it was basically normal. But his blood platelets were down low still because of this virus. And I finally, I felt okay, just okay about his situation. And after that, I told the doctor, I said, look, doctor, I'm not a doctor, okay? I'm calling from the U.S. My uncle's a doctor, and I'm bouncing all this information off of him. So from here, we can kind of get an idea where he's at. I said, that man in that bed is my brother-in-law, and those people in that room are my family. And I said, whatever you need, you tell them, and they will let me know, and I will get it to you the best that I'm able to, right? Oh, okay, sir, okay. Well, probably a couple hours later, we get a message to call. The doctor wants to talk to me. And so I instantly, my reaction is like, oh, man, really, all right, call back. The doctor says, yes, sir, I need your permission. I want to refer this case to doctor. And sorry, I don't remember the doctor's name. This infectious disease specialist that apparently is involved with the colleges and universities in the area. So it's like this, sounds like anyway, like this big shot infectious disease doctor. I said, man, I want you to get the best doctor that you can find on that island and get that person in that room. That's what I want you to do. Okay, sir. Okay. So the specialist came in, and I might add, he needed an ultrasound. So I asked her what's the results of the ultrasound, and she says, "Oh, I'm sorry, sir, we can't do an ultrasound today because it's a holiday, and we only do ultrasounds Monday through Friday, weekdays. So we have to wait till tomorrow to do an ultrasound." Now, in my mind, the guy's dying, right? So what do you mean you can't do an ultrasound? I said, "So you're telling me there's no way you can do an ultrasound today?" And no, sir, sorry, that repeated the holiday, and it's only weekdays. Well, come to find out, miraculously, and I don't even say that, I mean that, the specialist showed up on a holiday. They ran all these tests on a holiday, and come to find out, the specialist, who is awesome, she knows exactly what she's doing, says that the reason why this disease was so severe is because he probably had it before and didn't know it. And that you don't build immunity to dengue, you get more sensitive to it, so it becomes more dangerous. That's why it accelerated the way it did. And in the background of all this, keep in mind, I'm calling my pastor, anyone I can get a hold of, other buddy of mine, so he can get a hold of everyone at his church. So while all this is going on, we literally had hundreds of people praying for Ronnie 8,000 miles away, in a whole other country that speaks a different language. So we got pretty positive news from the specialist. She says he's doing well. His platelets are still low, but he's not bleeding. He's got a little bit high blood sugar, but we're going to keep monitoring him. And if he makes it 24 to 48 hours without a fever, he's basically good, and we'll be able to go home. Now he's still in the hospital, but his condition is solid, man. I mean, he's going to make a full recovery, and sounds like he's going to be going home soon. And the reason why I wanted to put this story out there is because there's no doubt in any of our minds that although there's all this, real negative stuff, and everyone can see evil everywhere and the bad everywhere, miracles are real. And this was absolutely a miracle, no question.
Well, the ambulance ride to go from a platelet count of 2 to
34.
That is impossible with what it sounds like he was treated with.
Yeah, and it happens to be right around the level that
is needed for
surgery. Because my Uncle Rick told me, he says, we don't even do surgery on people that have a blood platelet level of less than 40,000 unless it's an emergency. Just happen to be around that level. I just find that interesting. It's an interesting fact. I don't know how that happened, but it did. And the guy's a fighter. Don't get me wrong. I would never want to piss him off by any means. But, he hung in there, man. And the family pulled together. The whole story. And they literally had people from all around coming to try to donate blood. People they didn't even know were showing up like, we'll donate. The problem was it wouldn't do any good. There's no time. You have to process the blood, right, to get the platelets. So whole blood wasn't the answer. But...
So he's all right now.
Right now, he's good, dude. Like I said, they're going to do another ultrasound on him. The last update I got, they're going to do one more ultrasound. They're being really careful because they just want to make sure the virus is gone, right? If the fever doesn't come back, he's good to go. And now I told Grace, I said, you got to make sure you tell your brother that from now on, he has to think in his mind that mosquitoes are always trying to kill him.
Right.
Because you can't even risk it. You can't even risk it. But the bottom line is, thank God, I have to give thanks where thanks is due. He absolutely did this, and everyone that was out there praying for Ronnie, they don't even know him. I have no doubt in my mind that it was that energy or whatever you want to call it, right? That actually he heard it, and he was like, all right, this guy's got to be around.
Yeah, that's now these are stories that I'd be eye rolling a few years back.
Oh, sure,
but
sure.
There is definitely something going on because, when I talked to you earlier in the week, you were already essentially, you know, I don't want to sound morbid here, but you're planning his funeral. Like it was a known fact that basically
it was
over.
Yeah, it was bad enough to where I was literally thinking, okay, we're going to be booking a plane ticket here soon. And I don't, obviously, you know, that was, you know, you don't want to think that way, but hey, man, you know, if it's gonna, we got to be ready. And I was expecting that, you know, but again, like Howard put it best, right? Did he tell you what he told me? This is hilarious. Howard, who has similar sense of humor to ours.
I'm shaking my head. I forgot we're on the radio. No, he did not tell me.
He said, he's like, dude, I prayed so hard, I think I have a hemorrhoid. And I laughed so hard. I mean, we had people really, the way people pulled together was amazing.
There's something going on because I've, even on my Facebook, I've seen people requesting prayers for people, and they will get like 200 replies, like unbelievable stuff. And, I've been noticing this. You know, I know that someone listening is not gonna, you know, feel what it is to be on the inside of this story, but I know that people inside your family are firmly believe that a miracle happened. Now,
Sure.
and I would have been like the sort of person I'm like, oh, it's just something they didn't catch, and they had the wrong diagnosis, whatever, and. You know, as I learn more about how the spiritual world works, and again, I learn more of it by researching the dark side of it. So you find someone, and here's a name if you guys want to look someone up. His name is John Todd. He was a self-admitted member of the Illuminati. He defected from their ranks in the early 70s, and he gave several talks on literally how they operate. And he was involved with the summoning up of spirits and demonic entities. And that may sound strange to people, but from my perspective, I have now seen this. So it is not a hoax. I mean, it is very, very real. In fact, one of the things we're going to talk about today is the largest machine on the planet, which many people believe, and I'm not talking conspiracy theorists, I am talking about nuclear physicists, particle physicists, the top scientists in the world that are highly concerned with what's going on at CERN. So I'm going to transition into that unless there's anything else you wanted to add.
You know, I wanted to add one last thing because I think this is something that my wife and I we're now sighing in relief, right? I mean, because we're pretty sure now that he's going to make it. We're sitting at the dinner table. It was late. We are wiped out, man. Like wiped out from this past week. 3 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning. Everything is in the middle of the night because it's daytime there. And we're talking about Ronnie and her family and just in general. And I said, you know, something just occurred to me that I said, you know, here I am. And of course, you know, I've been around him a few times, and I've been around her family, and I love these people very much, and I'm over here fighting, praying, all these things for Ronnie. I said, you know what's really strange to me? It just occurred to me. I said, you know, I have never had a conversation with your brother because of the language barrier, but it didn't matter, and that's kind of the point, right?
Have you ever met this guy?
Oh yeah.
All right, so yeah. I was just wondering because from the way you said it, it was like you had never met him. That's what I had got. I missed the first part of the story.
Yeah, I met him. I've been over there a few times, and I've been around her family, and they're my family, right?
Sure.
But I just thought it just occurred to me. I thought it was very interesting that the emotions I was feeling. I was literally blubbering, crying. I couldn't talk on the phone. I mean, I was tore up, man. I tore up, and I thought it just popped in my head. I said, you know, I've never had a conversation with him. Because he can understand and speak English, it's just really hard, right? And I don't speak their language, and I understand it enough to be seriously dangerous, and it just is another it reaffirms some things for me that there's things at work here, good and evil, all around all the time, and when you recognize them, you start accepting more and more, and that's where it leads into. What Dave, you were just referring to with the this polarization that's going on because the good things are getting really good and the bad things are getting really bad, like accelerating, like at this hyper, like rate?
Well, I've observed this in my own life without a doubt, but and this is also reflected in some of the prophetic books, certainly in the book of Revelation, that in the last days there's going to be this pouring out of the Holy Spirit, and at the same time there is going to be this manifestation of the evil demonic, as if we are accelerating towards this zenith in a spiritual war between dark and light, literally. And I'm here to talk a little bit about the dark side today. And so while I educate some of these guys on what CERN is and where it is and why it's significant, will you do me a favor?
Sure.
And find out, it's in Genesis, but
Genesis 11.
Tower of Babel.
Genesis 11.
I'm going to have you quote whatever is written in there in a little bit. So, Eric, how are we doing on time? Should we just hop into CERN now, or do you want us to
just go as long as you want? I mean, we can take a break now, come back, and you have probably a little over an hour and 10 minutes to go, or you can kind of introduce what you're going to talk about and then take a break. Whatever you want to do, man.
All right, let's talk about CERN a little bit and what it is and why it's significant. And we're going to kind of be jumping around a little bit. And I want to throw out a disclaimer. I am not a nuclear physicist. I've done my best to understand the science behind it, but I got to admit, this is one of the topics that for me has been very challenging, because you almost need to learn another language to understand what the scientists are saying amongst themselves. Now, we are talking about literally the largest machine on the planet. It is funded by multiple governments. CERN, it's also known as the an LHC, a Large Hadron Collider. And the concept is, the purpose of the machine is to get particles to smash together in such a way that it gives us these very instantaneous views into other dimensions. Now, this is not coming from the words of some conspiracy theorist. This is actually cutting-edge, modern-day science. You won't find this really in your textbooks in school. So understand that the information, again, it's out there if you want to go look for it. And some of the concepts we are going to be discussing, which in scientific circles are very routine type discussions, we sheeple here in the world may view this as science fiction. But I want to emphasize the fact that this is not fiction at all. This is documented scientific fact, and you can go look that up for yourself.
Well, I not to interject, but with CERN, isn't their proposed mission is to actually recreate the instance of the Big Bang?
Yes, and we're going to get to that.
Okay.
They first of all, the Big Bang in itself is a theory, and in that theory, there is this massive release of energy with massive heat and the forces that we know in nature. And essentially, there are four that we're aware of. We've got magnetism, electromagnetism, we've got gravity, and then we've got what's called the nuclear strong and the nuclear weak forces, atomic strong and atomic weak. And, I think gravity is the one we're most familiar with. And we always, tend to think, oh, gravity is so powerful. It's, this massive force. It keeps the Earth, quote unquote, in orbit around the sun. But actually, gravity is the weakest force we know of. And I don't know if it was on this show or if I was just in a conversation, but, if anyone has a paperclip here, I can run this experiment for these guys in this little room right now. But my little iPhone holder has a magnet on it, right? And I've got a pen in my hand. And we've got the gravity of the entire Earth working on this pen, trying to pull it down, right?
Right.
And with no counterforce, it goes down. And you guys, Eric and Dave, you're
It
both
hits the
looking at me.
table. Yeah.
However,
It's not metal.
it's what? It's not exactly.
It's not metal.
Magnetism doesn't work on. Something I learned deep into my science.
That's some kind of science thing,
I know.
man.
Should this guy really be talking about anything? So I'm just pulling a little paper clip out of my bag.
Of course, he has a paperclip.
And, dude, I even have a stapler in there.
Wow.
So there again, by itself, gravity pulls the paperclip down, but this little magnet that's as big as a dime, battling the entire planet Earth, it's no match.
Right.
The small magnet wins. It's holding this paperclip. Essentially, it's suspended. Gravity has been more than equalized. It's been beat. So you understand the power we're talking about here. And power and energy continue up this scale at an exponential level as we get into the atomic level powers. And that is what CERN is trying to uncover is, what some scientists will say were the conditions of the Big Bang. Some people have called it, the search for the God particle.
That's right.
There was a great CERN scientist his name escapes me, but if you research CERN, you'll certainly come across this guy. And he was, I'm going to use his metaphor. This is not mine, and because I like, getting things simplified. And he's like this: if you were to put a house together and glue it together, we can see that the house is together, right?
Right.
Now, the glue, which at one point was in a liquid state, is now in a solid state. And we can observe that the glue is holding the wood together, and that's what's holding up this structure. But we don't have a way to get that glue back into its original state. Now, these are some of the, quote-unquote, hidden forces of nature that we are still trying to find. And so really what CERN is doing on this metaphorical level is we are trying to find the building blocks of what the glue is that holds together our reality. We have discovered things like the Higgs boson field,
right.
which I would almost say it's kind of like the backdrop. It's like the context for what happens at the atomic level. Strange things happen as you get into the very small. When we are at the smallest particle known to we humans, the particle loses a characteristic that's called locality, meaning that until you see it, it's nowhere and everywhere. Now again, when I say there's a whole new language here, another way of saying it is that there literally needs to be thought or intent put into the physical structure of anything. Because if you understand what is really going on in an atom, it is space. It's just empty space. The equivalent of a little, a proton with and if I get the name wrong, correct me here, but when you've got a little electron orbiting a proton, the equivalent of that for our size is considered University of Michigan's football stadium. And you put a little, the size of a green pea at the 50-yard line, and around the outer perimeter of the stadium, you've got this proton that is circling it. That's the size of, it's actually even smaller than a green pea, and everything else is space. So, this table that we've got all this equipment on, and the glass window here, the reality is that there is much more space than actual matter. In fact, every year the number keeps going up, but scientists, to compensate for ongoing scientific findings, continue increasing the number that we assign to what is dark matter or dark energy. And the last I had read about it is that we now suspect that at least 23% of the known universe is made up of dark matter, i.e. something that we don't know what it is. When they say dark, it just means it's a big question mark. Yet dark energy, which is the energy that makes the world go round and keeps the planets in orbit and explains all sorts of all of our basic scientific understanding of these forces, we are now up to a number that is 73% of known energy that we know is there because we can measure it is dark energy, which means we don't really know what is behind it. What is this building block of nature? So CERN was built to essentially get that glue back into its liquid state, to find the building blocks of our world.
The glue.
Yeah, basically, before it hardened.
Yeah.
Because that has been a problem. Now, I might be skipping forward a little bit, but there are a lot of scientists and theologians as well that are very certain that what we are doing with this Large Hadron Collider, with CERN, is recreating something known in history as the Tower of Babel. Now, we know it because when you babble about something, this originates in the story of the Tower of Babel. And would you have the
Yeah.
Now, we're going to tie this back to modern-day science in a minute, but what does Genesis say about the Tower of Babel?
Well, this is Genesis 11 in the NIV version. Now the whole world had one language and a common speech. As people moved eastward, they found a plain in Shinar and settled there. They said to each other, "Come, let's make bricks and bake them thoroughly." They used brick instead of stone and tar for mortar. Then they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves. Otherwise we will be scattered over the face of the whole earth." But the Lord came down to see the city and the tower the people were building. The Lord said, "If as one people speaking the same language they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language so they will not understand each other." So the Lord scattered them from there all over the earth, and they stopped building the city. That is why it was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of the whole world. From there the Lord scattered them over the face of the whole earth. And that's Genesis 11.
Right, so when someone babbles about something, they're actually referencing the Tower of Babel's story. And I believe, so this is the Babylonian kingdom. This is the first prophesied demonic kingdom in the Bible. It was a kingdom based on literally all of our occult religions, from Wicca to dark magic to paganism. They all originate in the Babylonian culture. And I believe Nimrod, who was the king of Babylon, was the one behind this Tower of Babel. So, me.
He
I
said
take
Nimrod.
Exactly.
Yes, he did.
And I also think, by the same token, there's a reason that Nimrod becomes a derogatory term.
Sure.
At least when I was in 6th grade, you frickin'
Yeah,
Nimrod.
it means just, it's stupid, whatever.
So now Nimrod's background's interesting. We're not going to get into it, but he may have. There are implications that he may have been more than just some regular human being. But I don't want to get too far off base. Shinar, I think, is somewhere in the vicinity of the modern-day Syria. And maybe, Eric, you can shed some light on that while I keep talking about this.
What?
I was going to say, maybe you can find out where Shinar, Shinar, I think it's in modern-day Syria, but this is where this tower was being built. And, there are many levels of meaning as you read these ancient texts. And very often, what is the superficial information has many, many deeper layers of meaning. And for me, it sounds like these people were trying to build a tower that was tall enough to reach into the heavens.
Yeah, literally.
And God had a problem with this, and that's why he, instead of them having one language, he confused their language so they couldn't communicate with each other. They, in a sense, could not continue building this thing. But I don't think it was a problem of height, because we've got skyscrapers right now all over the world. What you've got are many theologians and now scientists who have converted to Christianity, which I find very interesting, especially the ones that have been working with the Large Hadron Collider, who they equate the Tower of Babel with a sort of a hadron collider. This was a massive structure that was meant to open up another dimension. Now, that is exactly what CERN does.
Now, did they not actually? And I don't know this for sure. I just remember reading something, and you can maybe confirm it. Isn't also time travel part of their mission?
You just need a flux capacitor.
Yeah,
duh, and a DeLorean.
It is actually been. It's absolutely part of their mission.
Okay, yeah.
And now, I'm not Marty McFly talking about this. I'm going to be talking about people like Stephen Hawking, considered to be the preeminent astrophysicist on the planet. And these concepts are routine to the high-level scientists involved with this. So if this sounds like science fiction, one little hint I'm going to give you guys, because when you find out who really controls Hollywood, and for some reason it's in their doctrine to discuss what they're doing behind the scenes, even in science fiction movies. I think you'll find a lot of truth of our world buried in science fiction.
So you wanted I'm sorry, real quick. You wanted the present day location?
Yeah, just for
pretty much Iraq.
Okay, makes sense.
It says by the Tigris and Euphrates River, Chaldeans, all that stuff. So it's right in modern day Iraq.
Yeah, and I want you guys to remember that, because where was our military in such a hurry to get to with this staged event of 9/11? A country that really had nothing to do with 9/11 in retrospect. Where do we send our military?
Yeah, Iraq.
Thank you. And what you'll find out if you go look at the testimonies of military insiders, there was an incredible amount of attention paid to ancient/biblical cities, structures, and artifacts, much more than the Iraqi people, than the reestablishment of the Iraqi government. It was as if our military was there to retake over some of these ancient sites, which seems like a very odd job for a military, if you think about it. Not that that was their only purpose. Certainly we had some interest in oil and wanted to get some additional military bases in the Middle East, which have all come to fruition. But let's talk about CERN a little bit. So the way it works is it gets particles traveling on this massive circular pathway. It's a 17-mile path, and you'll get a particle that'll it'll travel, and it'll pick up speed through magnets pushing it forward. It takes several months to get these particles up to we can get it just under the speed of light. And then what we do is we've got another particle moving in the opposite direction, and we collide. They collide. And what comes in that explosion are many of the building blocks of our modern day world, of the things that create mass and matter. Exactly. So here's a few things that are interesting about it. Let's see. First of all, now you already know that pretty much any topic we're going to talk about here is going to be grounded in science. So we're going to talk about the science aspects. But like I said, for me, the further I get into this, the more there is crossover between the scientific and the spiritual.
Well, you can count on me for that. So,
all right. Well, be ready to go to correct me on some things, because I'm going to be going over some notes I made, perhaps a little bit hasty. So, all right, this is a massive project. This is a cylindrical tube that's about 575 feet under the ground. It is located near Geneva, Switzerland. And what is the name? And a town called Cessy. It actually goes across to Switzerland and one of the bordering countries. Now, you might find it interesting. I don't know where this note is, but the very spot where this thing is built, Cessy, was originally known as, I want to say, Apollonia.
that's right.
Which was it was a city that was built in worship of the god Apollo, Apollyon.
Right.
Now, the Bible says something about Apollyon in the last days. Do you happen to know offhand what
I do.
that is?
In fact,
Oh,
it's
dude, you
actually
rock.
it's
If you can-
actually a step further than that. It's actually located directly over top the ancient temple site that was dedicated to the god Apollyon. And I believe Apollyon is mentioned in the book of Revelation.
Right. So while if you can find that,
Sure.
and that would be a big victory. So part of it covers Switzerland, part France. So the town, the old name of the town or the area, and I'm going to botch this up because I do not speak French, but it's along the lines of, I'm going to do the phonetically English so you can spell it out, but like I said, this is not how to pronounce it properly. Saint Genus Poily. And Saint, we know how to spell. Genus, I think it's Genis or perhaps US. And Poily, I don't know, Poilly. So the name Poily comes from the Latin Apolliacum. And it's believed that in Roman times that this temple, I think the one you're talking about, existed to honor Apollo and the people who lived there. And there was essentially an old myth that this was a gateway to the underworld. So I found it interesting that CERN would be built on such a thing. And while you keep looking at that, I'm going to tell you one other thing to go clue into here that's not so scientific, but just observation. And Eric, maybe you can comment on this, but look up the logo for CERN right now and tell me if you see a 666 in their logo.
Well, it actually is their logo.
Well,
It's not in it. It is it.
I know, but I actually wanted to see what Eric had to say.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah.
Now-
Now, let me ask you something too, because I remember also coming across something, and you may be getting to it. I'm not sure, but go back to Apollyon, because this is kind of important too. Didn't the demon Apollyon actually turn into another modern day false god that we're all familiar with?
Who?
Shiva.
The destroyer of worlds.
That's right.
Now, what's interesting is, and Eric, you're going to kind of be playing our audience member that I think is going to have their jaw on the ground as we discuss this.
Okay.
So, you are correct. Now, what, Eric, if you can look this up online, what pagan god, what statue of a pagan god is essentially the mascot of CERN? I think you'll find out it is the god Shiva, and she is known, or he is known as the destroyer.
The dance of destruction.
The destroyer of worlds. Mm-hmm. President Obama actually had a photo, and I want to say it was Newsweek, in which he mimicked the pose of Shiva. And it is no accident, folks, that, again, science, paganism, 666, these are not idiots that are behind their PR campaign, behind their logos, behind the imagery that is there. It is, again, it's the truth hidden in plain sight. And maybe I'm jumping around a little bit, but if anyone's interested, go onto YouTube and simply do a search for CERN scientists and find out why they are converting to Christianity in droves. Find out why dozens, if not hundreds of scientists refused to be part of the greatest scientific experiment in the planet. Why would a particle physicist refuse to be a part of this? If you don't have the biblical verse, I've actually got it. You've got it right out of the book. Let's hear it out of there.
So this is Revelation chapter 9, I believe.
Is this
that's
1 to 2?
Yes.
Okay.
We'll just go through it here.
Now, and I think I know what you're going to say, and I'm now, again, I would have been eye-rolling this a few years ago, but I firmly believe that this is prophetic, and they're specifically speaking about CERN. That is a personal belief, but read what the passage is.
Well, and before I read this, also, I do believe that the statue of Shiva that's outside of CERN is actually ancient.
Meaning?
It's old. It was donated.
Refurb, very possibly. That wouldn't surprise me. I don't know that,
I think
though.
it's very, very old. Anyway, I thought that was interesting. But Revelation chapter 9, and of course, anyone who's read the book of Revelation, it's pretty abstract. But I think when we get to the point, you'll see at the end what we're talking about. The fifth angel sounded his trumpet, and I saw a star that had fallen from the sky to the earth. The star was given the key to the shaft of the abyss. When he opened the abyss, smoke rose from it like the smoke from a gigantic furnace. The sun and sky were darkened by the smoke from the abyss. And out of the smoke locusts came down on the earth and were given power like that of scorpions of the earth. They were told not to harm the grass of the earth or any plant or tree, but only those people who did not have the seal of God on their foreheads. They were not allowed to kill them, but only to torture them for 5 months. And the agony they suffered was like that of the sting of a scorpion when it strikes. During those days, people will seek death, but will not find it. They will long to die, but death will elude them. The locusts looked like horses prepared for battle. On their heads they wore something like the crowns of gold, and their faces resembled human faces. Their hair was like women's hair, and their teeth were like lions' teeth. Their breastplates like breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings was like the thundering of many horses and chariots rushing into battle. They had tails with stingers like scorpions, and in their tails they had power to torment people for 5 months. They had as king over them the angel of the abyss. Now the abyss is what?
The bottomless pit.
Which is
not necessarily hell, but it seems to be the domain of the demonic, the outcast, the forces that were, the angels that were kicked out of heaven.
It's like deeper than hell.
All right.
They had as king over them the angel of the abyss, whose name in Hebrew is Abaddon, and in Greek is Apollyon, that is, destroyer.
Now, so what is written in an ancient text 2,000 years ago, here we see in the modern day world the god Apollyon, at this place where modern day scientists who are not versed or couched in the Bible are saying, wait a minute, we are screwing with our whole planet. We're opening up a dimension, and we don't know what can come out or come in. And here's what else I find interesting. The last major experiment that was done with the Large Hadron Collider.
It was the largest one yet.
Now, they went from colliding a few particles at a time, and remember, it takes several months for these magnets to get particles up to speed. They began in March of 2015, a process that would take 6 months, which took us to September 23rd of 2015.
Right.
Now, maybe a lot of people were tuned in to the blood moon tetrad, and I know there was a lot, if you're...
You could do a whole show on that.
Exactly. God, throughout history, this very crazy array of a pattern of blood moons, red moons with an eclipse has happened about 5 times, and incredible world events have been right at the time that this was happening, even in some cases on that same day. Now, me personally, I was looking around waiting for, something incredible to happen that I would see. But I didn't see this, but in retrospect, I found it really interesting that experiment concluded on September 23rd, which was it was one of the big day of the blood moon tetrad, and you've got dozens of scientists documenting the fact that what is, we blew up, we didn't just blow up we didn't collide a few particles, we collided 600 million. And you had scientists like Stephen Hawking himself. Now, there's a part of me that thinks Stephen Hawking is nothing but a NASA
where's the wizard?
Joke. But along the lines of, a sense, broadcasting what they themselves have planned as sort of this, just this sick...
Well, did he not warn that they may actually create a black hole?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about what several scientists' warnings were. But now you've got a number of scientists, all right? Scientists. These aren't biblical folks. They're scientists. And they are going nuts because what they're seeing coming out of there right now are these entities. And we are capturing this on not video-type cameras, but cameras that can pick up disturbances and wave patterns, and there's several different ways to see something. It's not just visual. We've got infrared and
think of it as like
microwave.
sensors.
Yes, sensors. Thank you. And they are freaking out because they are observing the fact that something is spilling out into this plane as we speak. Now, I find it interesting, again, that what was this show based on is it seems like evil is getting more evil. I mean, look at the world. And at the same time, good is also getting good. Your story,
That's
your
right.
brother's story is a good story. But at the same time, I mean, we've got heads being chopped off. We've got horrible things happening to children in Syria. I mean, and a lot of that is perhaps coming to the United States. So there again, there is this confluence of prophecy in this ancient book that is actually manifesting, as truth today. Now, could there be some jokers at CERN that are just like, oh, we're going to screw with the book of Revelation. We're going to put this, this big statue of Shiva up. We're going to call it code names so we get all the Christian conspiracy theorists all worked up about, what's in the book of Revelation? Or is it possible that maybe there again, God knew what was going to be happening, and it's happening. No matter who's doing it, he predicted Israel would be reformed. He predicted the language would come back. He predicted thousands of things that are happening, including Revelation 9, books 1 to 12. Now, I haven't seen these scorpion-like creatures come out, but there's a part of me that thinks that sounds like tanks and or helicopters. Also had a lot of folks comment on it, thinking that he's probably talking about actual demons, like the angels that fell, the very angels that we talked about as a foundation for this whole show on our first two episodes, the same angels that got me in hot water with Uncle Mike, if you remember. So how about, is right now a good time to take a break? Sure. All right, why don't we take a break, 5 minutes or so? Sure. We got to run some commercials. We will come back.
We're going to play one of his buddies, the Slammin' Zeros.
Yeah, dude.
All right.
My boys, man.
We are going to come back. We're not going to just talk about everything that's bad. We're going to be talking about essentially how to protect yourself from this, what's really going on. We're going to get a little deeper into the science of CERN. So, again, we're not going to be thumping Bibles. We are going to be talking about science, but I do find it interesting that it is cross-referenced in this same text that was written thousands of years ago that is a lot more, I now understand, than some mythical BS. It may be the truth of the world. Welcome back to Down the Rabbit Hole with Dave and Eric.
What's up?
And Eric, you...
Jace.
Something you said in the beginning, which I totally respect, which is, you don't take things so much on faith. You need to sort of see it.
Yeah.
And I know, if you go back to when you interviewed me about 9/11 a year and a half ago, you're like, what the hell's this guy talking about? So you've kind of been like my representation of the litmus test of the audience. Like you may represent like the voice of our audience in a lot of ways, because you don't necessarily buy into the things we cannot see, which, and I value that very much, because, it's I'm the same way. As pro-God as I am, I still have a hard time taking some things on faith.
Right.
So what are your, where are you, and I ask this like every other week or so, where are you emotionally, where are you in your grasp, understanding, belief in some of the topics we're talking about?
I consider myself fairly educated on a lot of the stuff. I like to know a lot about, or a little about, a lot of things, and not a lot about a little things, just so I can have conversations. When I first started out, I did paranormal radio with my sister, and
Okay.
I was the skeptic. She was the ghosty. And that was our
she's
team.
a medium, if I remember correctly. Something like that.
Yeah,
And he's still rolling his eyes.
He's
So
like,
we've got the real Eric here. He is not here to be a yes man at all.
So we did a show called The Skeptic and the Ghosty, and we started interviewing, psychics and ghost hunters and, just paranormal people, and the paranormal spectrum is huge. I interviewed cryptozoologists who'd claim they'd seen Bigfoot, and, all that stuff. And I'm the kind of guy that like if the ghost comes and taps me on the shoulder, I'll be like, hey, what's up? And then there'll be an Eric-sized hole in the wall because I'm going to take off.
Right.
But that's my kind of, my thing. But, going through and, I was interviewing people that quoted the Bible, so I needed to educate myself. So I read some of these chapters, and I read about the Nephilim and,
Sure.
Babel and Noah's Ark and all the bigger stories that people would talk about. And so I versed myself on some of that stuff. But then, with the whole 9/11 and conspiracy theories, I've always been I'm a true crime guy, so I know about the JFK things. You know what I mean? That there's no fucking way, excuse my French, that a dude from an 8th floor balcony or whatever shot him as precisely as he did. It just, there's little things like that, and then the 9/11 thing, and then all these other things, the Challenger, Sandy Hook, all these method actors that are showing up to these things, and it's opened my eyes. So I mean, I guess from a year and a half ago to now, I'd say I've done a 180, and I just look at things a little different now than I did before. And it's kind of shitty to say. Again, excuse my language. I know this is
a lot of French today.
Yeah,
I love French.
But it's kind of a crappy thing to say because it just goes to show you that the people that are controlling everything would rather pull the wool over your eyes than tell you what's really going on.
Well, if you're going to ask me, there's a lot of stuff in the works. We've talked about the fact that it's my personal belief that there is something in our skies, and what we're really dealing with here aren't aliens as we think of them as ETs from another planet.
Big eyes, gray skin.
But they will absolutely there's enough scientific proof that there are physical creatures that are we're not humans. I don't think are alone as the only sentient thinking beings on this plane called, or this in our plane on Earth, whatever you want to call it. And there if the devil were real, and he wouldn't be a one-trick pony. It's not like he's just going to try and get the Second Amendment, wiped out so we lose our guns, our ability to defend ourselves. Like any military operation, would be a multifaceted, congruent attack from many different directions. I mean, any military strategist would tell you that that's the way to do it, is to overwhelm your enemy. So when we talk about the fact that it seems that there's going to be a unveiling of what really is in our skies, it is not in lieu of what we're talking about today with CERN. In fact, my opinion is these things are actually calibrated to work together and all be unveiled. at the same time. And we may be living in the times where it is going to be unveiled. And this, goes to the topic of the show today, which is the polarization of good and evil.
Yeah, because you're talking about demons essentially.
Right, and I was raised my whole life to think anyone that mentions the word demon is a whack job. So I still find it amazing that I am sitting here saying that word out loud to a lot of people, some of them in my hometown who probably will never hang out with me again. But I would rather be on the path of truth with fewer friends than be wrong and be popular. And that's
and I think it's important to point out too that when you talk about if the devil were real, which for me he's absolutely real, he's referred to the God of this world for a reason.
Yeah, I always used to think, well, God's in charge. Well, yes, God, as in big G, is absolutely in charge of the whole kit and caboodle. But if you're reading the texts, it's in several different books in the Bible. It was certainly, this was a surprise to me that actually, it's not God that is really running the day-to-day things on earth. It is literally the prince of the power of the air, the father of lies, the deceiver of the whole world. These are all different monikers that the opposer, the accuser, also known as Satan, his name Lucifer before he fell, the devil. I mean, this guy's got, the Rolling Stones did a song on him. He's many different names throughout history and time. And again, I used to think it was all mythical, just mythical BS, but
and some people even contend that it's just been put there to control people, to scare them into good behavior, right? As a way to control society, but it's actually much more than that. It's actually real.
That I'm of that opinion, obviously. Now, I would have argued though that, and you got to. I want to make sure we understand a distinction between religion and, let's just say, believing in these writings, because we're talking about two different concepts. When I hear the word religion, I'm thinking Catholics and Protestants and Muslims and Hebrews. These are the religious systems of our world. And I do not confuse those religious systems. If there is an opposer, if there is a devil, absolutely would have been corrupted somewhere along the way. And most people, I now understand this because I've read, I can't say I've read the whole book, but it will be a lifetime journey to understand the 66 books in there. I used to think, I'm good with God because I would go to church once a week. Well, once every 6 months. But some people go every week, and but when I actually read what's in this book, it does not correlate at all to, it's not about just doing something for an hour a week and looking at your watch when you can get home and start watching football, because that's how I used to do it. And a lot of it seems to be a distraction. And so I'm always I don't know what religion you call it, but I'm a proponent of, I love reading. I love learning. And this is something I frankly would encourage people to understand better. There's a reason that I'll bet you anyone listening to this broadcast has, even as we sit right now, that book is within 50 feet of you. And I don't care if you're at a hotel, if you're at a gas station, at a library, or in your own home. There's a reason that this is the highest selling book in human history.
It's in every language.
Especially with so many seeming forces at work trying to squelch it. And, Eric just stepped out for a second, but his girlfriend Brandy had asked a question to me on Facebook, and I wrote essentially a thesis / a dissertation.
Yeah, it was good though. It was very good.
In there, I'd written that don't you find it funny that one of all the real or mythical entities that have ever existed, who's the most polarizing in the history of mankind?
Yeah, Jesus Christ.
And there are, I agree, and there are people that, and if you think about it, he had no marketing team, he didn't have the internet. How is it that there's so much focus put on trying to convince humanity or those that will listen that he was either mythical or that he was a fraud or that he was just, some crazy guy. But how is it that about half the planet, in spite of all that, still believes that he's, at least knows the name? I mean, I think everyone on the planet knows
Sure,
who
yeah,
he is.
absolutely.
I mean, why hasn't that effort been put towards, the Tooth Fairy or Santa or Muhammad or Allah or Atlas or Zeus? The list goes on.
Buddha, yeah.
Why just him? And in the thesis that I wrote to Brandy, just a personal conclusion is that there's if there's this opposer if there's this if the devil is real and the only ticket out of his kingdom, which is what's written in this book, is through the blood of Jesus Christ, then I understand why there's so much focus on debunking him.
Sure.
And he doesn't care what you believe about Zeus or Shiva or Columbus or whatever, because if you don't have that get out of jail free card, he's got you.
Right.
And that's what this book claims, which the further I look into it, again, I'm seeing things predicted thousands upon thousands of years ago that are coming to fruition right now. And it's more than just, one or two coming true, okay. But when you've got hundreds upon hundreds of these predictions, some so incredibly specific happening, and each one you can assign a general probability to, and the fact that they are all either have come true or seemingly are on the verge of coming true, you are now reaching, the probability of all this happening 1 to 10 to the millionth power. We're talking about so many zeros that it is impossible for it to not be true. And I'm trying to explain, I'm not there because of faith. I am there because of statistics and mathematics, if that makes...
That makes absolute sense to me.
So here's what Stephen Hawking, let's just raise an eyebrow about Stephen Hawking, because this guy has been, apparently he's got multiple, or ALS or arterial MS of some
I'm not
sort.
sure, but I want to know who the man behind the curtain is.
Okay. The man behind the curtain. So, in the early 80s, NASA built, just for him, this computer that would allow him to communicate with humanity. And, again, I find it odd that that technology wasn't developed for many other people that could have used it. It seemed to only be developed for Stephen Hawking. And next thing we know, I've never heard the guy speak. All I hear are the fact that everyone else seems to say he's the smartest man that's ever lived.
Well, anytime you try to speak out against him, what's the answer is always, this man holds the very seat that Sir Isaac Newton once held. How dare you even think? I mean, but the guy, and not to be offensive, but he's a turnip.
Well, I don't know. I'm not going to say that for sure, but I will say this. He's written many books.
Yeah.
I've seen documentaries of the device he uses in order to communicate. And he basically, we can type at a certain speed, right? Now, what he has to do...
Talking about Stephen Hawking.
Yeah, exactly. What he has to do is essentially, imagine there's a keyboard in front of you. To find the letter A, he's got to go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and he comes back Q, W, E, R, T, Y, U, blah, blah, blah. And then he gets to A, and he can hit the letter A. And if the next letter he needs to find is an N, he starts back over, and he goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He has to... So for him to just spell a sentence can take an hour. Yet, somehow, he is able to have the time to research, the time to write... and if you do the math on how long it takes him to form even a sentence, how long would it take him to find a website and he was certainly doing this before the internet was out there, just to get one of his nannies to go pull a book off his shelf would take several hours.
Right.
And it's hard to, that to me, it takes more faith to believe Stephen Hawking is truly the smartest person on the planet than it does to believe some of these other
That's
things.
a valid point. And really to back that up, I mean, he did I don't know the name of it, but there was like a documentary that he...
God in a nutshell?
I don't remember, but the point of the whole show was that he proved God's not real.
Right.
I also find that very interesting.
Yes, so do I. And, people will argue with me about, how smart Stephen Hawking is. But at the end of the day, all they're really arguing is what the television told you to think
That's
about
right.
him. And I've been saying this, turn off that television set because it is melting our brains without a doubt, because we're being taught to believe things that take much more faith than what we're talking about here.
Yeah, it's plain old-fashioned deception.
And I'll say this, the truth is not determined by the majority vote. The truth is the truth, even if 1 out of 1,000 people are speaking it. Don't lose your ability to think critically. Again, if you think Stephen Hawking is the smartest person in the world, all you're really doing is showing us that you know what to think. Doesn't mean you know how to think, and there is a big difference, and very possibly the outcome of your eternal soul could reside on your ability to make that distinction. Nonetheless, let's talk about what the mainstream media claims Stephen Hawking himself had to say about CERN, because I find this very interesting. I don't think, if you're asking me personally, I think we are listening to the man behind the scenes, the one we've been talking a lot about. Yeah, exactly. A metaphor for our world, really, in The Wizard of Oz. And again, it is their doctrine to almost brag about some of the things they're going to be doing. And this is a whole different show topic. I don't want to get into it. But if you're interested in learning about how they do it and why they do it, look into something called predictive programming, and you can YouTube it or Google it, and I'll just leave it at that. Nonetheless, Stephen Hawking, here's what was attributed to him in a book that he wrote, Starmus, Starmus. And I will say this, I have not read that book. I read God in a Nutshell. Very thick, hard read. However, and so I'm going to say I have not seen this in that book with my own eyes. However, there are several articles that claim that this is what's written in that book. So I want you to understand where I'm coming from. And these I'm quoting Stephen Hawking. The God particle found by CERN could destroy the universe.
Right.
Hawking wrote that in a preface to the book Starmus, a collection of lectures by scientists, not just his book. The Higgs boson field could become unstable at very high energy levels and have the potential to trigger, quote, a catastrophic vacuum decay which would cause space and time to collapse, and we would not have any warning to the dangers. 10 minutes. All right. Now, Hawking's not the only guy that's out there saying this. Another one of my favorite quote-unquote astronomers is Neil deGrasse Tyson, who, now, some people, I don't claim to know the shape of the world. There are some people that claim it's flat, some people claim it's round, and Neil deGrasse Tyson claims it's pear-shaped. So just know that there are different opinions from different places in that, and there's no piece of information I will take any longer without vetting it with my own eyes. But here's what Neil deGrasse Tyson said that, here, let me just read this. Hawking's not the only voice in the scientific wilderness predicting possible catastrophe if CERN continues in the atomic fast lane. Astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson told Eugene Merman on his Star Talk radio program that the experiment could literally cause the planet to explode. It continues on. Ask yourself, colon, how much energy is keeping it together? Then you put more than that amount of energy into the object. This is what's happening at CERN, and he again said it could explode. I've seen other scientists talk about coming up with a statistical probability that this experiment could possibly wipe out the planet and put a probability on it of somewhere between 8 and 20%. Now, this is one of the reasons you've got many particle physicists walking away from CERN and saying these guys are nuts. Like, they literally have no idea what they're getting into or what they're doing. And there's been this turnover issue, and, you know, CERN today is made up of younger, swayable kind of, you know, that don't take the bigger picture into consideration. In fact, here's another thing I'm going to read to you. In late 2008, when CERN was first firing up the engines on its atom-smashing machine, Otto Rossler, R-O-S-S-L-E-R, German professor at the University of Tübingen, he filed a lawsuit against CERN with the European Court of Human Rights on the grounds that the facility could trigger a mini black hole that could get out of control and annihilate the planet. Now, here's another high-level scientist warning us. So the warnings aren't just in, you know, when I'm in that book, I'm pointing to the Bible here. The warnings aren't just in there. That this is modern-day science, and these guys aren't necessarily biblical. I don't know what his philosophy on the Bible is, but it's irrelevant. This guy is saying, hey, man, we are opening up.
Like something's up.
Something is happening.
And they also came out and said that something will come through, but they don't know what.
So here's another one. I'll just read this one out as well. A year after CERN's grand opening, Sergio Bertolucci, former director for research and scientific computing of CERN, grabbed headlines when he told a British tabloid the super collider could open otherworldly doors to another dimension for a very tiny lapse of time, mere fractions of a second. However, that may be just enough time to, quote-unquote, to peer into this open door either by getting something out or getting something out of it or sending something into it. He goes on to say, of course, after this tiny moment, the door would again shut, bringing us back to our normal four-dimensional world. Now, the fourth dimension, as we know, is time. You mentioned earlier, yes, these guys are starting to mess with time travel, which I grew up thinking this is impossible because I couldn't just comprehend it. But when I hear other nuclear physicists saying it's not possible, it's actually already happened. And if you understand quantum physics and a topic I'd brought up briefly on some prior shows, quantum entanglement, you get two particles that are joined together. One is negatively polarized and one is positively polarized. Again, negative, positive, light, dark. I mean, this theme is not just in nature, it's in our human souls. And all right, 5 minutes. So you can separate these two particles. When they're together, if you change the polarization of one from negative to positive, the other one immediately flips. And we have been able to separate these things by enough distances, and even though it should take, at the speed of light, this information should take, you know, a fraction of a second, but it should take a little bit of time to reach the partner the partner particle, yet the polarity is flipped instantaneously, which means time travel, at least at a particle level, is possible. Information is traveling faster than the speed of light. Now we're starting to get into some areas that they're just over my head right now, and I don't want to sink like the Titanic. So let's see. Here was another interesting. Okay, this was so Bertolucci, the guy I was just talking about. He added this. He said, of course, after this tiny moment, the door would be shut, bringing us back to our normal four-dimensional world. It would be a major leap in our vision of nature. And he goes on to add this very interesting line. And he says, and of course, there would be no risk to the stability of our world. Now, why would you volunteer that?
Yeah.
It's like saying, don't look, don't worry about. I'm not.
Yeah, nothing to see here, right?
Exactly.
So if this is a window for, let's say, and I'm just going to go here on the way my mind works, for demons to cross over, would that not be an explanation for this concept that you brought up about polarization of good and evil, meaning evil's getting worse and good is getting better? And maybe a way to illustrate that for mankind, if you have a bowl of salt and pepper mixed together, and some people have a propensity for good, and some people have a propensity for bad, one being salt, one being pepper. Now, as these are polarizing, the salt and pepper are starting to separate and become their own groups, right? So say, and it doesn't matter which one, but one group is good, one group is bad, meaning one group is saved and one group is fallen. So basically, mankind, I think, right now is lined up on a fence, and because of these events that you're describing, if it's actually true, then maybe it's time you decide which way you're going to go.
I do sense that without a doubt that, and again, that this is not just written, and I keep pointing to this book. There's like this something inside me that this is not scientific. I can't explain this other than to say it feels like it's time to decide. And one of the God in His kingdom there's free will, meaning that if you don't actively choose His kingdom, He is not going to put a gun to your head and make you go to heaven.
Right.
A lot of people are relying on it. He would not operate that way. That is not. That just does not seem to be the type of God, the Creator God we're talking about, the way He is. But you will, by de facto, be choosing. If you don't choose, He goes out of His way to say, if you don't specifically choose My kingdom and you do it through, a little ritual with Jesus, a mental ritual with His Son Jesus, you are in a sense choosing the other side. No choice is
a choice.
That's
right.
And He's very clear about what happens to the ignorant, those that ignore all of these warnings, all of these things happening, is you are in a sense choosing not to go to Him. And getting up there is a layup. I mean, it's so easy, yet we have been so conditioned to, it's almost like we've been programmed to repel one of the best potential messages with, all this dark stuff, all of it is meaningless if you have essentially sided with the forces of light.
Right.
And you've got your get out of jail free card. You've got it.
It's right there. Open it.
Sadly, some people will just be stubborn and they won't bother to look at how to do it. And those folks could be staring at a personal, eternal catastrophe.
Correct, sir.
So, there is good news. We just said it. Do some research, folks. This has been another episode of Down the Rabbit Hole with Dave and Dave tonight. Hopefully we'll have Howard back next week. Eric, thanks for...
oh, sure.
Thanks for manning the board. I'm buying a beer at Mickno's. Everyone, God bless. Have a good week.
Peace.